Hey guys, welcome back to the J.Dosh channel, and today I'm going to be talking about why I think Walter Crane is the new Nicolas Bourbaki. Nicolas Bourbaki was a group of French mathematicians. I think there was originally like 9 of them. Nicolas Bourbaki actually invented the empty set symbol, which is in the 21 Pilots logo. So what Nicolas Bourbaki was to the trench era, something related to it, something that had to do with it, something that was sort of integrated into the story of trench. I think that Walter Crane may play the same sort of role in the new era of Scaled and Icy. So where did I get this idea? Who is Walter Crane anyway? So a 21 Pilots fan on Instagram asked Brandon Reich, who designed the album cover for Scaled and Icy, hey, where is the original dragon from? And then Brandon said, old 1860s terrifying children's book illustration by Walter Crane, public domain. So shortly after seeing this and looking up just a little bit about Walter Crane, I decided that I really don't think this is a coincidence. Why? Well, I wasn't able to find the original illustration myself. Someone else on Twitter did, and so I'm gonna show you their tweet right here. Hi, this is VoiceOver Me, presenting you now with the full illustration from the Fairy Queen. Here we have a side-by-side view of Trash and the dragon from the Fairy Queen. It's kind of weird that the dragon from the Fairy Queen has horns and Trash doesn't. I wonder why they got rid of them. Is there some deep meaning behind this? So the original illustration is from I don't know if it's a poem or a book. The Fairy Queen is actually an epic poem. Anyways, it was written in like the 1500s or something by Edmund Spenser, and then a version illustrated by Walter Crane was released in 1897. I think Brandon probably made a mistake and said 1860s when he meant 1890s, because the Walter Crane version of the Fairy Queen was published in 1897, unless of course Walter Crane made a dragon that looked just like this one. Just like Trash in the 60s in a different book. I don't think that's probably the case. I think it's more likely that Brandon just typed the wrong number by accident. The Fairy Queen appears to be in sort of an allegory story. I don't know. To me, it looked vaguely like the same sort of idea as Pilgrim's Progress. I haven't read the Fairy Queen, so I don't know for sure. But in this video, I'm going to be focusing on not the Fairy Queen, but Walter Crane. So this is what Encyclopedia Britannica says about Walter Crane. Walter Crane, born August 15th, 1845, Liverpool, Lancashire, England, died March 14th, 1915, Horsham, Sussex. English illustrator, painter, and designer, primarily known for his imaginative illustrations of children's books. As we already know from the first interview Tyler's already done about Scaled and Icy, the whole thing has a lot to do with imagination and things, so that makes sense that they would choose a drawing by a guy who did a lot of imaginative stuff. From the 1860s, Crane worked on illustrations for children's books and developed a distinctive symbolist style which often featured mythical or allegorical subjects, which is certainly something that goes along with 21 Pilots. Trench had a lot of symbolism. By the 1880s, Walter Crane was already well known as a book illustrator and painter. He had revolutionized children's book illustration, believing that young children would learn as much from the pictures as from the text. He designed wallpaper, ceramics, textiles. I actually found this cool dragon that reminded me a little bit of Trash. It's sort of wrapped around this charger. He designed with a knight on a horse, and then there's this dragon wrapped around it. It reminded me of the dragon we see in Josh's head on some of the Scaled and Icy posters, as well as the dragon just sort of wrapped around, sort of around both of them in one of the posters. Walter Crane was also interested and influenced by Japanese art. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, probably the most important technical development in his art derived from his study of Japanese color prints, whose methods he used in a series of toy books, thereby starting a new fashion, which I think is pretty interesting, seeing how in the Scaled and Icy promo posters and stuff released so far, you can definitely see the Japanese influence with the dragons, with Tyler's hair. Well, I think Tyler's hair and the dragons and stuff could be also attributed to Chinese culture. Tyler and Josh were both born in the year of the dragon. With the sai was invented in Japan. That's not even true. The sai was not invented in Japan. Although nowadays it is often seen as a Japanese weapon, it was in fact used in several Asian countries before it ever got to Japan, including Thailand, China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The sai may have actually been invented in India. And the sai is definitely a big part of the new Scaled and Icy era. It's on the cover. You don't even see the title on the front cover of the album. I did look up a little bit about the Japanese color prints. I thought maybe they'd have similar colors to maybe the Scaled and Icy color palette, but I'm not really seeing that too much. I didn't look at it a ton, but I didn't really see too much to make me connect that, but it could be that Japanese color prints and Walter Crane's interest in that could be influencing Scaled and Icy. I don't know. I didn't really look at it that much. One thing I found specifically interesting about Walter Crane is that he was a socialist and used his art skills to further socialism. He used it to make propaganda. Nobody, not even William Morris, did more to make art a direct helpmate to the socialist propaganda. Nobody has had a greater influence on the minds of doubters who feared that socialism must be remote from and even destructive of the sense of beauty. And that is very interesting. First of all, propaganda. About that time was when he really became part of the arts and crafts movement. Okay, here's what Wikipedia says about the arts and crafts movement. It stood for traditional craftsmanship and often used medieval, romantic, or folk styles of decoration. It advocated economic and social reform and was anti-industrial in its orientation. So the arts and crafts movement, they were much more into more local, traditional, old-fashioned things opposed to mass-produced industrial art. I guess that's what I get from it. You can look it up. I'm not going to talk a ton about that. The movement flourished in Europe and North America between about 1880 and 1920. I thought this was really interesting because back in my tuberculosis video, we saw how in the Romantic era, medieval stuff was very popular. And so I thought it was very interesting that 30 to 60 years later, it was popular again. Another thing I found interesting about the quote I read you earlier was that people were worried about art being sort of destroyed by socialism. And we have Tyler Joseph and Josh Dunn. If you think about Trench, Dima is a place, it all looks very gray. The only color you really see besides like gray, just different shades of gray. And then the only other color you see besides that is just like the red of the bishop's robes. And the fact that they thought socialism was going to destroy art is like, I feel like that could definitely be worked into Banditos embracing real life and things like that, and Dima embracing this sort of fake, simulated, drained way of life. Now, I don't know Tyler Joseph in real life. I don't know his political stance on socialism, whether he is pro-socialism or against socialism or whatever. I'm not going to theorize about that because it's none of my business, but I am going to talk about propaganda. Because if you've been following along with what's going on with Scaled and Icy, you know that propaganda is important. If you remember 21 Pilots' single, Christmas Saves the Year, on the album art of that, there was a picture of Tyler and Josh, and then there was this present that was wrapped, and it said Clancy on it, and it also said, SAI is propaganda. Nobody really knew what that meant, but then after Blurryface's tweet about the new album being called Scaled and Icy, we had new ideas. So basically, Scaled and Icy is propaganda. So Scaled and Icy is propaganda, and the guy who drew the dragon on Scaled and Icy was a person who made propaganda. I thought it was really interesting how Walter Crane was interested in real art, like the arts and crafts movement, opposed to like manufactured art. It sort of seems like the whole 21 Pilots idea of don't trust a perfect person and don't trust a song that's flawless. But then he was also using art to try to make socialism look good. And to me that just sort of looks like how the bishops are using art to make their propaganda look good. The vibrant return of 21 Pilots. Feel the saturation. It seems like the bishops are just trying to use art to make Dima look good, just like he was trying to use art to make socialism look good. My main question about Scaled and Icy is, are the songs propaganda? Are the songs actually from Josh and Tyler? Or are they supposed to be like from Dima? Are the songs bad? That's my concern right now. That's what I've been confused about and trying to figure out with Scaled and Icy. But the fact that the guy who did the art, the guy who drew the dragon, for the cover of an album that's supposed to be propaganda, at least to some point, at least the story is, it has to do with propaganda in some way. I don't think it's a coincidence. Nothing makes more sense than that a guy who used art to make propaganda has his art on the cover of propaganda. Does that make any sense? Basically, I don't think it's a coincidence that Walter Crane designed the art for Scaled and Icy. Is he going to be as important to the Scaled and Icy era as Nicholas Bourbaki was to the Trench era? I don't know, but I do think that his life and his work may provide clues to figure out the new era. So I do think that he could be an important thing to keep in mind as we're theorizing and going forward into the Scaled and Icy era. I don't know if I'm going to be doing more 21 Pilots theories or not. I think this is like my 6th 21 Pilots theory. Thanks for watching. I hope you like this video. If you want, you can like and subscribe. If you don't want to, that's fine. And